I'm getting a bit closer to the end. Actually, I didn't really do much since last time. This is the Zorki one. This is the FED1, the one with the grindy advance. It's horrible, but the shutter is running quite nicely. It's not set up yet. Since the advance is such a mess, I decided not to pursue it. Now I'm going to steal stuff from this one to get this one as close as possible to be a working camera. And for that I took some time and analyzed what's good and what's wrong. Well, for starters, this one is quite wobbly, and if I try to twist the knob counterclockwise, so like a rewind, it can actually go back, which is a bad thing, and it means this little spring under the gear, that is the anti rollback spring, let's call it that, is not really okay. I will steal the spring from this one because this one is known to be good. That's one thing. Hopefully some of this wobbliness will also go away, although it has more to do with the shimming, I think, and less with the actual piece. Or maybe the gap between the hole in the body and the shaft is actually, yeah, it's too much, so it's too big, so the hole in the body is too large for the shaft. That could also be a cause. This one is quite tight. I could swap the entire thing, because actually I'll try to do that, because the gear, this gear and this gear, they both look alike. This part and this part are different, but they are screwed on to the gear. So that's what I'll try to do, and maybe see if I can shim it some more. And another thing, this rewind knob seems a bit off, so that could be either a matter of a bent shaft, or this rewind knob, winding knob, has some flaw. I don't know. I could almost steal the entire knob, although this one is a bit higher than this one. Otherwise in very good condition. I'll see. One more problem that I found on the Zorki is that when it's set to B, sometimes it will not release the shutter after pressing the button, and I need to push on this spring plate. If I hit it really short, it works. If I hit it afterwards, it closes. So there's not enough tension in this plate. This one doesn't have the same problem. So I will swap the plates. I measured them, they are identical in size. The bend on this one seems a lot steeper than this one, and that means that it should put more pressure. I will also No, I won't steal the screws. These ones are nicer. All right, other problems. Obviously, the bottom plate looks a lot nicer on the FED than on the Zorki, but I can't swap them. They are not screwed in. Another problem is that this part that will latch the bottom cover is wobbly, and unfortunately it's riveted, so I just have to leave it as it is. My fear is that at some point it will break the rivets, and that's gonna be a problem. It could be fixed in theory by drilling out the rivets, threading the holes in the bottom, and using regular screws. But that means that I should get myself tap and die set. I think that's the name. So I can make the threads, drill them out, of course get everything out, remove the rollers, so it's too much for a little wobbliness. I will see how it works out. What I did on the FED and I didn't do on the Zorki was adding this felt on the two light shields. My idea was that it would absorb some of the noise and vibration, and the sound of the shutter on this FED is actually very nice. It's very clunky. The sound of the Zorki is more metallic, a bit less loud I think, but more metallic. Now the two light shields, or the two sets of light shields, are a bit different in design. The FED has these wings that embrace, in a way, both the drum and the rollers. On the Zorki they are pretty much flat, so just enough to cover the edges of the curtains. I could still glue some felt on them just to dampen the noise a bit. Maybe I will try, but that's not very important right now. And I think that's about it. What I will also need to do is see if I can recover enough screws from the FED to put on the Zorki. That's gonna be a problem because this one also had a very big issue with the screws, and that's the main reason I stopped working on it, because I wasn't lacking one or two, I was lacking most of them. So yeah, I don't know if I'll have enough resources to finish this one for the time being, but I would like to get it into a point where it's decent. The shutter is running okayish. The second curtain is a bit slow, so it accelerates, I'd say, a lot slower than the first, but until I put a roll of film through it, it's very hard to tell. This shutter adjustment and principle of functioning is a rabbit's hole. So once you go down, there's no end to it. I mean, you can split hairs forever, and some of it is the result of the design in itself. Some of it is the way physics applies to this kind of a shutter, and I don't know if there's a correct answer. I don't know how you could test it reliably. Of course, a shutter tester, but for instance, just an example of problems when trying to adjust the shutter. Even if you had a shutter tester, a super precise shutter tester, a professional one, doesn't matter. that has, most professional shutter testers have 3 sensors, and they are usually placed diagonally, so they can cover both horizontally and vertically traveling shutters, and one is placed here, one is in the middle, and one is on the other side opposite to the first one. So up, middle, down, left, middle, right, up, obviously. So what the shutter will tell you, or could tell you, would be of course, it will tell you shutter speed, it will tell you curtain travel time, so the time needed for the curtains to travel from one point to the other. It could also tell you curtain travel time variation, or curtain speed variation, because it will measure time from point A to B and then from B to C. And if the time from B to C is smaller than from A to B, that means there's an acceleration gradient, and it will tell you this gradient. What it cannot tell you is the rate of, or not the rate, the evenness of acceleration. So how constant is that acceleration? Because if it's not constant, and most likely it is not, it will accelerate either faster, so just like in a car, if you're trying to leave from a standstill and hit whatever, 50 miles an hour, doesn't matter. The initial couple of meters will be sluggish because you need to beat inertia and put the power to the ground, okay? And then it will accelerate faster, and then after some point it will accelerate slower as it, I don't know, the engine gets out of the torque range and whatever, given that you only use one speed, I suppose, so one gear. Anyhow, the idea is that that variation of acceleration will lead to a variation of exposure. Now, and this is another aspect that I will talk about in a future video as a continuation maybe to one of my previous videos about the ways, the way the Zorki 4 shutter works, which is pretty much the same way all Soviet shutters of this type work. And I made some comments and some opinions there that might not be true. I got some feedback on that video, I did some further research, I talked to a couple of people about this, and while the opinions differ and there's no general consensus, there are bits that I missed last time. I simply didn't think of them, I didn't understand them. So yeah, I'll make an update video and try to add to what I already said. Of course, I am totally sure that 1 year from now I will have a updated opinion on the situation, but for the time being I will tell you what I know. All right. What I was trying to say is that since this is a thing that is not so obvious in these two cameras, but it's a lot more obvious on the Zorki 4. There is a difference in diameter between the drum and the rollers, and that means in the Zorki 4, where the two are physically connected through the thingy on top, so through the shutter speed selector as an assembly, that means one curtain will travel faster than the other because that's how it's designed, as long as the other, meaning the second curtain, is not traveling at a higher rate, so a shorter curtain travel time, in which case it will travel, let's say, fast enough that the first curtain cannot pull it. because that's the idea in the Zorki 4. The first curtain pulls along the second curtain, but since the tension on the second curtain is higher, if it were, that means it will outrun it. The second curtain will outrun the first curtain, and that's a problem. It shouldn't be like that because, well, you'll see when I'll get to making that video. Anyhow, in this one, there is a difference in diameter, but it's smaller. That difference means a different rate of, um, I'll call it discharge. So the rate in which the roller or the drum releases whatever it's on it, ribbon or curtain. And that obviously implies a different speed. That's one thing. And the other thing is that as the shutter accelerates, having a greater speed means that it needs a narrower slit between the two curtains to maintain the same exposure on the film plane. And that's where things really get tricky, because there are so many variables that should be known in order to determine curtain travel time, so tension on the rollers, slit size, um, the rate of increase of slit size, and so on. And I don't. I mean, I would like to know. I would like to know how to adjust them perfectly, if possible, which is not. But I don't think they are worth this kind of uh, time and energy investment. Not necessarily because they are bad cameras. They can be bad, this one, or they can be better, this one, and they can be good. I did service a Zorki one that was actually a very nice camera. It was not a Leica, it wasn't far from one. Okay, but in the end of the day, they are meant to be used, and as long as uh, the errors that can occur are not so great that they have an impact on the result, I'd say service them, clean them, make them nice, use them. They are made to be used, not to be shelf queens. In particular, the Zorki or the FED1 could be shelf queens because from a distance you wouldn't know it's not a Leica. I mean, you would know because of this rectangular shape of the viewfinder and some other little clues, but it's not important. Um, they are meant to be used. So as long as you use them and you enjoy using them, they will be fine cameras. And at the same end of the day, it doesn't really matter what camera you use, right? I mean, you can get excellent results from this one or from this one even, but you won't enjoy using it from a Leica, from a Kiev, from whatever. It's the Indian, not the arrow, right? All right, so long story short, that's what I wanted to say for the time being. I will start and swap parts. Maybe they will fit, maybe they won't, so it will be a trial and error, and I'll see where this mix and match takes me. All right, let's continue. Alright, first step was a bust. They do match-ish, so you could theoretically swap them, but winding with this gear instead of the original one has the same effect, same feeling as winding this one with whatever the original bits are, so it's very grindy. It's no. Now I wonder, maybe this is actually the culprit, because it seems nicer winding by hand. Now I wonder what happens. God damn. Just for my curiosity, even though that means taking it apart again. What happens if I put the Zorki one in the FED? And I'll stick a screw in here just to keep that spring from turning. Maybe 2 screws. Alright, and I'll also get this back. It's a lot better. Not as smooth as this one on the Zorki, but it's a lot better than this one. So this is the bad part. That is interesting. Well, at least now I know. I always had the impression that it was somewhere else. It was running smoothly without the shutter because there was no load on the gear, so it only had to turn like 2 other gears. It wasn't a problem. But with the shutter in place, yeah, it's better. It's not perfect. It's better just. But yeah, that's okay. Now I know. So this is from here, this is from here, this one is from here, this is from here, and now to get them back in this one. So that's one. Fortunately, I think these screws that keep the spring connected to the top plate might actually work on the Zorki. These are the screws from the FED, and if they do work, I have two brand new untouched screws, so they should match the holes in the casing. Too small for these ones, and too small for those also. So yeah, it's another bust. Okay, let me get this one back. Yeah, the grinding noise is back. Well, that's it. All right, for the next next theft, so this is the light shield, and this is the felt that I stuck on there. I have no idea if it helps or not, but I'll keep it original as much as possible, so this one will go back into the FED, especially now since it has potential. At least I know where the problem is, and I will just borrow this piece. So those are FEDs. Now this is one of the trickier parts to put back, because there are three pieces that need to align, and you can't really have a way to keep them aligned. So what I do, I set the shutter on a bulb, trip the shutter with one finger, keep the camera like this, align the little bracket on top of the light shield, try to get them both with my index finger without moving their position, turn it around, take a probe or the tip of the tweezers if it's fine enough, align the holes, try to keep everything steady, get the plate back, and now try to put the bloody screw back. And the bloody screw, okay, it's magnetic. So if you have a working mat like this one that has little squares of little holes like this that read magnetic on them, so they have a magnet inside, you can put a screw there, leave it for a while, and it should stick to the screwdriver. after you've got the first one, everything is a bit easier. And now let's see if the holes align. Well, something happened. And yet the same problem. It's a bit better, and these are not quite tight enough yet. Let's see. So after putting the light shield back, you will need to open the shutter and look from the back to see if the light shield is parallel with the film gate. If it's not, then you'll need to make some adjustments, loosen the screws just a bit, then use whatever, like the tweezers, to slightly push the light shield so it's even on both sides. I'd say especially on the left side. If the distance is too short or it's like this, canted, the ribbons and the curtain's edges will rub against the light shield and you will lose part of the Soviet smoothness that they are so renowned for. Also known as, you'll get a much harsher camera out of one that could be, let's say, a decent one. Alright, let's see. Like I did now. I hear harshness, the shutter still doesn't want to close all the time. So it's bust number 3. That leads me to believe that the problem is elsewhere, and one of the possible causes is actually this, the bottom plate. What I did notice the other day was this. It moves because I think it had a rivet here that broke, and because it moves, see, this one has 2 and they are all nice and in place, and this one does not move. Because it moves, it actually shifts the position of this spring, so it's no longer pushing enough on the second curtain latch, which is that cane shape thing, and that is why it's not doing what it's supposed to do. If I push on the bottom plate upwards, it closes. So yeah, that's the cause. God damn it. Now this shutter crate is a mess actually. One solution would be to let me adjust it a bit because it's annoying. One solution would be to drill a hole, tap a thread and put a small screw, like, I don't know, maybe this one, or whatever leftovers I have around. But for that, again, I will need that tap and die, or what its name is, set. And hopefully I can do it without disassembly if I'm very careful. Although I'll get some metal shards inside, I could theoretically blow them away. Maybe I'll take the camera to work and use the air compressor, and that could fix the problem. Otherwise, all other speeds are working fine because they rely on the ledge being pushed aside by the first curtain traveler, so that's not a problem. Okay, I won't bore you with putting this one back in the bloody FED. What else? Oh, and the last problem was this. It has a wobbliness that this one also has, maybe a bit slighter or smaller, and there's nothing you can do about it. The little pin in the traveler is smaller in diameter than the holes in the disc, and that means it has a bit of play. Also, there's a bit of play on the disc itself against the shaft, which is kind of weird because it's pinned down with a screw, so theoretically it shouldn't, but probably the holes are a bit too large and they allow for a bit of wiggle. So there's nothing I can do about it. It's extremely annoying. You can still set the speeds without a problem, but you'll just have to wobble it around a bit. Okay, so that's pretty much the story of this camera. Not much else to mention. Rangefinder adjustment. This is the adjustment for the horizontal. So you need a very fine screwdriver that can fit through that hole. And then once it's inside the hole, you need to slightly or slowly move it left, right until you feel a positive engagement in that screw. And then you can twist the screw and adjust the horizontal. I use this screwdriver just for this. It's a 1.5 by 40, so 40, I think that's the length, and 1.5 was the actual width of the blade. It's not anymore. I mean, it could be 1.5. No, it's 1.1. That's because oh yeah, I filed it down, and I also made like a bottleneck here, so I reduced the diameter of the shank a lot. Otherwise, it wouldn't fit. Initially, I did it for a FED2. .5 by 40 is the same screwdriver. This one is the original one, and it doesn't really fit. I mean, you can stick it inside, but it's so on the edge or on the limit that you can't actually feel the screw, because you only feel it rubbing against the surface of the metal. While this one, come on, this one is the right dimension. Okay, and here you have the vertical adjustment that should be set first, and it's that little prism, shallow prism, that's somewhere inside the box of things. Is this one that you screw on, and you can actually twist the inside, so the glass part you can turn it around left or right, while the outer rim, which is actually a screw, stays still. So by turning it around you will adjust for the vertical, and that's about it. There's nothing else to say. A couple of brackets for the lens mount, all rusty. I'll have to make them shiny again, and that's about it with this camera. So I will end the series here. I don't know what's coming up next. Maybe that update video on the Zorki 4. It won't be necessarily about the Zorki 4. It will be about all Soviet shutters of this design. And yeah, end of another chapter. Thank you. Goodbye.